You are listening to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast with your ADHD coach and expert, Zena. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Navigating Adult ADHD, where today we are talking about one of the questions I get asked so often. And that is, how do I know if my ADHD meds are working? Oh my gosh, such a good question. Of course we want to know. Now, before we dive into that, I have got something really exciting to share with you. So excited. So today, the Navigating Adult ADHD membership. The membership is officially open from today, if you're listening to this in real time, right? It is the 10th of June, 2025. I really had to think about the year, right? It's only open for the next 7 days, okay? So if you have been listening to this podcast and thinking, she gets it, right? This is exactly what I need. Then I want you to know that this, my friend, this is your sign, okay? Because here's the truth. Medication can help your ADHD brain function better, 100%, right? But it can't teach you how to regulate your emotions when you're spiraling over some text message, right? It can't give you the tools to stop procrastinating, like writing and sending that email that you keep staring at, right? It can't help you to feel proud of yourself again, right? Pills don't build skills is something I often say, right? And it doesn't help to magically fix that guilt and that shame that you feel for never quite living up to your potential, right? That's where the membership comes in. So inside, we focus on the stuff that the meds doesn't do. Things like emotional regulation, right? Self-coaching, which I think is the most life-changing skill for adults with ADHD, right? Learning how to work with your ADHD brain instead of like fighting against it and trying to do everything the neurotypical way. One of our members described herself recently as being at rock bottom before she joined, and she said today her ADHD, where it used to take up about 90% of her life, it now takes up about 10%. Right? Like that consumption in her brain is just so much less. And then there's Dee, who went from this constant emotional, like roller coaster, constantly like having outbursts all of the time, to feeling calmer and more in control, right? Using the very tools that I teach you inside the membership. And Julia, who used to feel like everything was just out of reach. And now she says, this is the best thing I've ever done for myself. So my friend, if you are ready to stop trying to figure all of this out on your own, if you want to feel better, if you want to take action, if you want to make real progress towards your goals with practical tools and a community who have got your back, this is it. Come and join us, right? The membership is only open until Tuesday, June 17th. Again, we only open the doors 3 times a year, 1 week each time, and then the doors are going to close. So you can head to navigatingadultadhd.com/membership, right? Or you can tap the link in the show notes and come and join us. Come and start today. Okay. I'm so excited. Now, let's get into it. Let's get into this episode. How do you actually know if your meds are working, your ADHD meds are working? Okay, like I said, this is a question I get a lot, and it's actually something that we talk about regularly inside the membership, so we can help members in real time with what is happening and understanding what's going on. Now, I've got to put a disclaimer in here. Of course, I am not a medical professional, okay? This podcast is not intended to replace any medical advice. Please always consult with your doctor, with your healthcare provider before you make any changes to your treatment plan and to your medication, okay? When we start ADHD medication, it can feel a lot like trial and error, because it really is, okay? You might feel a change, but not really know, is this a good one? Like maybe this feels really good, but actually is it actually producing good things? Is this actually kind of working, right? Or maybe you experience no change at all. Or maybe you feel worse. So I've shared a lot on the podcast about my own experiences of medication. You can listen to both episode number 3 and number 50. In both of those, I share a lot about my experiences, what happened for me, the different medications I've been through, and my lessons, because I have learned a shitload when it comes to navigating meds and finding the right one for me. So when you're first prescribed the ADHD meds, when you come out of the psychiatrist's office, it can all feel a little bit overwhelming, right? There are lots of names, lots of types, lots of dosages, lots of different versions floating around, like all of these new words possibly, right? And chances are that your doctor may start you on a low dose just to see how you go. So I want to start by giving just a quick breakdown of the 3 main types of ADHD medications, right? So firstly, we've got 2 different types of stimulants. So the first stimulant is methylphenidate, okay? Methylphenidate is things like your Ritalin or your Rubifen or your Concerta, okay? Now, this increases the amount of dopamine and norepinephrine in the brain, right? It is the stuff that basically helps us with focus, with motivation, with impulse control, right? It's helping our executive functions to function. So it comes in, fast acting, right? But shorter lasting versions, right? And that's often what's prescribed first. So that would be, for example, you would take it at maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, and within 20 minutes to 30 minutes, you would really notice it in your system. Okay. But it will only probably last sort of 2 to 3 hours, and then it will start to wear off and be out of your system. Then you've got your longer acting versions, right? So you might take, for example, Concerta would be one of those, and you could take it maybe at like 7 o'clock in the morning. It often takes like an hour and a half to kind of come into your system, but then it's going to last about 8 to 12 hours. Okay. Now, you might feel it wear off suddenly and have a crash, or you might not really notice. It might be more of a gradual thing. Some of the common side effects that can come with this, and this is by no means a complete list, is things like loss of appetite, difficulty sleeping, headaches, stomach problems, that sort of thing. So then we've got our second type of stimulant, which is the amphetamines. Okay, so the first one was the methylphenidates. The second one is the amphetamines. So examples of that could be Vyvanse or dexamphetamine or Adderall, okay, which typically I think is more so prescribed overseas, not so much in New Zealand. So this is very similar to the methylphenidates, the first one I just described, but it's processed differently in the body, okay? So it's kind of processed a little bit differently once it's taken into the body. And so what this means is some people may find that they respond better to this type. So for example, if you start on the methylphenidate, maybe you start with some Rubifen or some Ritalin, and you don't respond that well, then you might be moved to this, to an amphetamine, because it may be processed differently in your body in which you respond better to. And that was, in this instance, that was the case for me. However, it could be the opposite way, right? You might not respond better, you might respond worse, okay? It is very individual, okay? This is definitely not a one-size-fits-all at all, okay? So, Vyvanse is one of the most commonly prescribed ADHD medications, all right, especially overseas and becoming more and more so here in New Zealand because it's a long-acting medication. So, for example, I take mine about 6:30 in the morning and it starts to wear off about 12 hours later, right, or maybe even 10 to 12 hours later, right? And it takes about an hour and a half to work it into my system. It is less likely to cause a big crash, right, for most people, but not for all. Again, remember, the side effects and the experience will be individual. Some of the side effects that you could possibly experience with any of the amphetamines is things like anxiety, stomach upsets, dry mouth. Dry mouth is very common. That is something I experience, so I have to drink a shit ton of water. And insomnia is another one, okay? So those are our first 2 types. We've got the stimulants that are methylphenidates, and then we've got the amphetamines, all right? Then you have non-stimulant medications. So examples of that could be Strattera, Wellbutrin, and guafoxin. I can never say this one. Guanfacine. I don't know. Starts with a G. Okay, I can never say it. Like I've literally got it on my screen here so that I didn't fuck it up, but I can still not say it. Okay, non-stimulants: Strattera, Wellbutrin, and the G one. Okay, now. These are usually prescribed if stimulants don't work so well, or maybe they have too many side effects, or if you have other conditions that, your medical provider needs to be mindful of giving you a stimulant. So, for example, heart issues, right? That would not be ideal because it has the potential of increasing your heart rate, etc. If you have difficulty sleeping, and sometimes the stimulants can impact your sleep or keep you awake, then that might be something that they would look at giving you is a non-stimulant based medication. Also, if you prefer not to take stimulants, then of course this is a great option. Now, one thing that's really important to understand when we start on a non-stimulant medication is it takes a lot longer to start working, okay? So we're talking weeks instead of hours, right? Much like an antidepressant or an anxiety medication, it takes sort of 4 to 6 weeks to build up gradually in your system before you really notice the full effect. All right, so for us who are not patient, we really got to practice our patience. But I do hear fantastic things. I haven't tried this, a non-stimulant medication myself, but I do hear fantastic things from many people who have. Okay, so generally, like the side effects, and it's much more gradual as it builds in your system. So therefore, it's not so can't be. What am I trying to say? The side effects would not be quite as strong. Again, if you were to experience them, they may again build gradually over time. So, all right, that was just a real quick recap of the 3 different types of medication. So, what do you need to know? You need to know that everybody's brain and body is different. So, what works for one person might feel awful for another person. Okay. It also takes time, patience. I know sometimes we suck with the patience, but it does take time, patience, and experimentation to find what works right for you. Okay. Don't be afraid to ask your prescriber, whether that be like your doctor, your psychiatrist, whoever, about different types of medication, different dosages, etc., if things feel off. Okay. This is one of those times where you're really going to have to advocate for yourself, my friend. So, when I first started stimulant-based meds, I thought that the very first thing I started on was working great at the time, okay? But after a few weeks, I started to notice over time my mood was dropping, right? So I was becoming like less and less happy, and my anxiety was creeping up and up and up to the point where I did not want to leave the house, like really bad, like social anxiety. That was a real red flag to me. I stopped taking the medication straight away, rebooked in with my psychiatrist, went back, and I switched to the other type of stimulant medication, okay? And, we talked through other options, etc. So you don't have to stick with something that doesn't feel right. There are like lots of different types, lots of different options, okay? So here are some signs that it might not be the right fit. No change in symptoms, okay? If you feel flat, anxious, snappy, or overstimulated, and I'm talking more so than usual, okay? If you have trouble sleeping, if it's keeping you awake, right? Physical side effects can be things like headaches, nausea, so feeling sick or having an upset stomach, fogginess, right? More so than usual. Right? Or if the benefits are very minimal or inconsistent. Now, when I say inconsistent, it may seem that they're inconsistent where hormones play a role, okay? Because hormones can hugely impact the effectiveness of medication for our women out there. So some common early side effects that often pass are things like headaches. So you may experience headaches for the first couple of days and then they sort of disappear. Nausea, a low appetite is another one, right? And trouble falling asleep. So again, this is often why like your psychiatrist will prescribe it for a month and then say, come back in a month to 3 weeks, what have you. And we can kind of assess what's going on because you're going to gain so much information during that time. Have you had headaches the whole time? If you have, then that's not great, right? Have you been staring at the ceiling wide awake? No, okay, this is definitely not a great option for you. Or, have you found that, you've been feeling a lot better and you've, been able to function a lot better and, you're less all over the place and like your family might be commenting that you have been doing really well lately, what have you, like that's really good. You want that information, that feedback, that stuff that you can work with to know, is this moving me towards the direction I want to go or is it keeping me stuck or moving me further away? Okay. So again, with those common early side effects, if those sort of things don't settle after a couple of weeks, or if they are very intense, you definitely want to talk to your doctor because you do not have to just push through. Okay? No, we don't do just pushing through. So here are 5 reasons why it may not be working, all right? Why your meds may not be working. First of all, the wrong dose. So often you may be started on a really low dose and not notice anything at first, right? That's something that I hear from many people, right? Another one is the wrong time of day. Either taking it too early in the day, right? Especially if it's a short acting one. Say you get up at 6, you take it at 6, and it's kind of out of your system by 10 a.m., but you're at work and you're like, why can't I function, right? So again, taking it too early, too late in the day. Then the third one is the wrong medication. Like it's the wrong type of medication for you. So for example, the stimulant medication, you need to switch to a different stimulant or you need a non-stimulant, right? The fourth reason is generic brand differences, okay? This is something that it's so interesting because when I talk to like psychiatrists about this, they're like, oh no, like we don't really see any difference in that. But when I talk to people with ADHD, they're like, yeah, when the brands changed, and I experienced this myself at one stage, when the brands change, the effectiveness changes and the side effects change, right? So generic brands versus, a different brand altogether. So that's something to pay attention to and just to sort of talk about within your ADHD community. Again, this is something we talk about a lot in the membership when, brands are changing, like they can't get the normal one that they would get. So they subcontract out to somebody else. So a different company is making it. It's all the same ingredients. We know that. We're always told that. But the way they're put together has to be slightly differently because our bodies are so sensitive, right? So sometimes those brands, the different brands, if we switch between brands, and they don't always tell us when this happens, right? That can be something that impacts our medication and how well it works for us, and also side effects that might all of a sudden come on. So the fifth reason that is very common, and these are not all the reasons, right, but very common when it comes to why medication may not be working, is life factors. And I'm talking life stress, right? The amount of stress you're experiencing in your body will impact the effectiveness of your medications. Hormones, right? That's a huge one, hormones, and health issues, right? Other health-related issues, because of course, if you have, a serious health concern, let's say lots of gut issues, your body is kind of, deploying all your resources to your gut to try and fix that, repair that, work on that, heal that, what have you. And so you're not going to be getting the full effectiveness necessarily of your medication, or it's kind of maybe going to be dulled down by other things happening. So life factors, right, especially the stress, the hormones, and the health issues can have huge impacts on the effectiveness of your medication. So sometimes that's, about working with a doctor or another health professional, whether it be like a naturopath or a hormone specialist or what have you, to help navigate those areas to help your medication become more effective. Okay, again, hormones is one that we talk about quite a lot inside the membership. I myself have just today, this morning, started on HRT, hormone replacement therapy. So I am experimenting with different things when it comes to hormones, and just really, I'm so good at studying myself and looking at all the information. So it's going to be so cool to be able to report back how that goes and what I learn. So let's go through some of the signs that your meds might be working. Gosh, where am I going? Might be working. The things that we want to look for, the things that tell us it is quite likely working. All right, from the top, focus. Focus is better. If you are able to focus on things for longer than before, right? I will often say, are you a little bit less all over the place? Right? If you're able to focus on something without, finish the email that you were writing instead of, going off to your colleague to chat about the weekend or what have you, or getting distracted by your phone, right? Like little things like that is something you want to pay attention to. And I am always saying to people, we need to keep track of this. I say, one of the things you can do is literally stick a calendar on the wall in your toilet, right? We've got an ensuite, I've got a calendar hanging there on the wall, and I will make note of when my period arrives, how I'm feeling, low mood, good energy, really regulated, super anxious, excellent focus. I'll keep it, just write some of those notes on there to kind of keep a track of what's happening and see the patterns, because that information is fucking gold when you go back to a medication appointment and review it, or if you need to change things, when it comes to navigating hormones as well, and hormone treatment or anything like that. That information is gold. Okay. So again, signs it might be working. I got a little distracted, didn't I? How appropriate. Focus is better. That was number 1. Number 2 is you're less impulsive. And I mean less impulsive both physically, like with your body, and verbally. Okay, so you're interrupting people less often, but also like a reduction in your brain chatter. And I'm only talking about the period of time when the medication is in your system. Okay, before it's in the system, when it wears off, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the time when the period of time when the meds are in your system. Okay. Next is an improved mood. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be happy all the time. That's not what I'm saying, my friend. I'm saying less stressed, a little less anxiety, less irritability, again, when the meds are in your system, and a little bit more calmness, right? Calmness, I think, is one of the things that I experience so much more and more easily now that I have found the right medication for myself, right? And with that increased calmness, right, and being less impulsive and finding it easier to focus and all of that makes using my non-medication tools, right, so much easier, right? Using my emotional regulation skills to calm myself down when shit's hitting the fan, like it makes it so much easier. So again, improved mood was number 3. Next is more motivation or an increased ability to follow through. It's not that you're necessarily going to wake up feeling like, yes, let's go get shit done today. No, that's not what I'm talking about. It is an increased ability to follow through. So it may not feel like motivation, so to speak, but you're noticing that more things are getting done. You're better able to start and finish tasks. I'm not saying all of them, right? But you're noticing an improvement in that area. Also, fewer mistakes or fewer mental blanks. Okay, so maybe a little bit better attention to detail. Now, I find with this one, I'm a little hesitant with this one because I notice that hormones can play a huge role in this. Like there's 2 weeks of the month where I forget my words. Like I will, miss letters and get words around the wrong way and just be like, why the fuck did I walk into this room? What am I doing? What the heck? Why am I here? Right? Like that does happen for 2 weeks of a month for me, and that is very hormone related. But when it comes to the other 2 weeks, it has definitely significantly improved compared to how it was, because I used to be like that constantly. Okay. So yes, fewer kind of mental blanks, but just be mindful of the hormone element there as well. All right. Better memory, right? You may find it easier to remember names or details that you have read or recall things. Again, I find that is very hormonal. So for 2 weeks in the month, I can do it. And the other 2, I'm like, what? Who am I? Where am I? Right? Another one is that you feel more like you, right? Not like a zombie, right? Really sluggish, dragging your feet, that kind of a thing, right? Again, it's less of that feeling all over the place, a little bit more clarity. Better sleep. Now, this one is something that can come in some cases with medication, right? But I find that the better sleep often comes when, once you've got a really good medication, for people, say, for example, who join the membership, it's about having other tools on your belt, like having other things to help you when your brain is really busy and you're staring at the ceiling, worried about, all of these things you haven't done. Like it's having some other tools to be able to navigate that. But again, medication can sometimes help with sleep, right? Help to slow down the brain chatter, etc., especially if you're on a non-stimulant medication, okay? Because then it's going to be in your system all of the time, not just for the period of time in which, it's meant to be in your system, right? And that's the benefit if you've got the patience to stick with a non-stimulant, right, is that it will be in your system all the time, day and night, all the time. Whereas a stimulant, whichever type you go with, the methylphenidate or the amphetamine, will only be in your system for a certain amount of hours throughout the day, okay? So I wanted to wrap up by saying when I first started taking ADHD medication, I'll be honest, I thought it was kind of going to solve all of my problems, magically make me neurotypical, what have you, and I would feel great and wonderful all the time, right? Unrealistic, I now know, right? But maybe you can relate. So here's what I've learned. Medication is one tool, right? And it is a really helpful tool, but it's not the answer. Right? It's not like a magical, this is it sort of thing. As I said before, pills don't build skills, right? Over time, with trial and error and side effects and research and a lot of listening to your body, right? I have discovered that medication can help my brain to be quieter, calmer, and more focused, definitely. But it doesn't help me magically regulate my emotions. It doesn't help stop the self-doubt or the procrastination or the overwhelm, right? And it definitely does not plan my week for me or manage my brain and all the thoughts up in there, right? What has made the biggest difference when it comes to my ADHD and thriving with ADHD is learning skills like emotional regulation and how to coach yourself, self-coaching, right? Learning how to work with my ADHD brain rather than fighting against it, trying to make myself be and act and do everything in a neurotypical way, right? Medication definitely takes time to dial in, right? That's completely normal, right? And if you are just starting out, I usually recommend that you allow a full year to get that really dialed in, all right? Now, if you're finding that meds help, but you are still struggling with things like your emotional ups and downs, the self-sabotage, the not following through on what you say you're going to do, you just simply need some more tools in your toolbox, all right? And inside the Navigating Adult ADHD membership, that's exactly what we focus on, building the life-changing skills that medication can't teach you. So that's your skills like emotional regulation, the mindset, which I was talking about, how to coach yourself, that self-talk, dopamine management, ADHD-friendly frameworks that actually work. Because when we combine the right medication with the right tools, that is where the magic happens. Okay? And again, remember, right now, doors are open right now for 1 week. So come on over to navigatingadultadhd.com and join other ADHDers just like you who are improving their lives. All right, my friend. Have a beautiful week. I'll speak to you soon. Hey friend, if you want some more help navigating and thriving with ADHD and some help applying everything that you're learning here on the podcast, then head over to our website, navigatingadultadhd.com.